Hey there, friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here again, and we got a preview for Destiny 2 today, talking about the Season 22 ability and armor changes, and I'm very excited about this. I'm hoping we get a complete overhaul of the meta, because there's a lot of things that have been really strong for quite some time, and I'd like to see some new things rise to the top. So hopefully that is the case. So we've got the exotic armor changes that are coming. Knucklehead Radar functionality of the Foe Tracer exotic has been completely removed from that exotic and added to Knucklehead Radar on top of existing benefits. Knucklehead Radar might be meta next season. That sounds kind of crazy. We took some cues from popular monochromatic Maestro artifact perk for this one. When you deal damage with one of your abilities, you gain a damage bonus with a weapon that have damage types matching your subclass ability types. Additionally, when you defeat an enemy you're damaged with one of your abilities, you will spawn one of the collectible objects such as traces or sprites. So a complete rework to Foe Tracer and then Knucklehead Radar getting a big buff. So both of those sound like they could be very, very interesting. Lucky Raspberry, this exotic was a little too unreliable in its current form, so we've taken a crack at streamlining its energy gains while leaving some of the benefits intact. The exotic still expands the chaining capabilities of an Arc Bolt, but now instead of basing the grenade energy gains on those chains, each time you damage an enemy with the lightning strikes from the jolted condition, as well as each time you pick up an ionic trace, you gain additional... Oh, the ionic trace one is very interesting for Lucky Raspberry. That meta in PvP was a time for sure. Now that you don't have to jolt them and trigger the jolt lightning strikes just to stun them, making these grenades a more reliable tool against overload champions. So the grenade has the intrinsic ability to stun overload champions. So I think that might be a PvE choice going forward, which is nice. Renewal Grasp, we've undone the previous nerf to Dustfield grenade cooldowns when using this exotic. Oh, so that makes it more likely you're going to want to use that. That makes sense. Titans, Icefall Mantle, Doomfang, Path of the Burning Steps, and Eternal Warrior. So we added an escalating damage bonus to arc and solar weapons, respectively, when you get kills with those damage types. We liked that this gave players another way to get surge-like bonuses, but the Eternal Warrior seemed to have the most reliable way to get up to tier 4 damage bonus. We made some further changes to these perks to make them a little bit more reliable while also expanding the functionality of the other two exotics. Okay. So might we see the rise of Doomfang and Icefall Mantle? I don't know. We'll have to see. Feedback Fence. This exotic got a complete mechanical rework and now ties into the armor charge system, increasing its versatility and making it more useful in scenarios where you might not be taking a lot of melee damage. With a new perk, which completely replaces the old, when melee hits grant you an armor charge, you take reduced melee damage while you have that armor charge. Taking melee damage causes you to emit a burst of damaging arc energy that jolts targets, consuming your armor charge and dealing more damage based on the number of stacks consumed. Damage dealt by the burst of arc energy should be comparable to his current damage for 0 to 3 stacks of armor charge. I don't know how useful that's going to be, but it is very interesting to think about. Hollowfire Heart. This exotic often stands in the shadow of the more ubiquitous Heart of Inmost Light. To remedy that, we removed its base energy to solar abilities and replaced it with a perk that will let you build more into sunspots. We think you'll be seeing many more sunspots in the battlefield as a result. As for the perk that greatly increases your ability to regenerate when your super is fully charged, we left that as is. So for Titan, as a Titan main, I'm happy. Looking forward to Doomfangs. Looking forward to Icefall Mantle potentially, especially if next season we see like a Stasis and Solar subclass artifact mods. So we'll see with that. Feedback Fence is okay, but Hollowfire Heart could be very, very interesting. Again, if we're leaning into Solar next season, Hollowfire Heart and just having endless sunspots could be insane, especially with Throwing Hammer and stuff. Warlocks, Astrotype Verse. We've added 2 more pieces of functionality. When you blink, the enemies near you when you reappear will be volatile. Ooh. You can then leap away, triggering a series of explosions when you fire upon them. Additionally, while you're using the Nova Warp super, the Dark Blink ability no longer consumes super energy. Okay. Astra. Oh, that sounds fun. It might not be meta, but it sounds fun. Geomag Stabilizers. While we often heard the calls to restore the perk, that lets you top off your super energy by sprinting. The legacy of that incentive still creates some pretty silly play patterns. Instead, we wanted to give players a way to get more super energy no matter how charged the super is. Now, picking up an ionic trace while writing this exotic will grant Guardians additional super energy. That's kind of generic. I liked the running aspect of Geomags, but again, more super energy is good. Wings of Sacred Dawn. Leaning into the orbital weapons platform. fantasy with this one. Typically, reloading was the main cause for a float to end. This exotic now automatically reloads solar weapons, including the weapon you are holding, from reserves each time you get a kill while aiming down sight. Oh, try this out with Xenophage. Imagine in Gambit you just see this floating Xenophage user. That sounds ridiculous. Winter's Guile, due to the nature of Stasis' Warlock melee ability, this exotic was previously a disappointing choice for that subclass. We've added a new perk for this one, specifically when you're playing Stasis. Now combatants encased by your Penumbral Blast melee will automatically shatter after a short delay. Okay, that's not bad. That could be interesting. So all these changes are solid. I don't know if any of them takes them into the meta, but it is good overall. So combat preview on abilities. Here we go. Reduce the uptime and potency of barricade abilities, particularly in high level PvP. Good. Reduce the potency of Striker Titan in high level PvP. Also good. Correct the one-size-fits-all nature of Suspend in Combat Sandbox. Rebalance our Strand Fragments suite to bring us some underperforming options and normalize the potency of overperformers. This is good. I think things should be evened out. Hopefully we have more options going forward for sure. Towering Barricade, base cooldown increased. All Barricade maximum health reduced. And then damage resistance versus PvE combatants increased to compensate. Okay, so it'll still be viable in PvE, but less so in PvP. We're not extending the Towering Barricade cooldown change to the Bastion variant, which already has a base cooldown of 100 seconds. Next up, Striker Titan. Probably won't surprise you that Striker has been overperforming. Theoretically, Thunder Crash is a one-off super, but in practice, its kill's potential is close to that of a roaming super. So we're updating the base cooldown to reflect that. So Thunder Crash increased base cooldown from 500 to 556, matching the majority of other roaming supers. Knockout, reduced damage bonus versus players from 50 to 30. That's good. Last up is Strand. So I don't know if those two are going to be the only two changes that are going to make things more even for strikers, but I do think Arc Titans are going to be not as dominant, and that's all that you want. You want things to even out a little bit. Plus, we'll see what they do with the Antius wards at a certain point, because they are overperforming as well right now. Suspend is currently a skeleton key that solves combat problems against all combat types. Current duration heavily steps on the toes of Stasis Freeze. The uptime of suspending atoms doesn't allow for meaningful player decisions. Okay, so here are the changes. Suspend. Reduce base suspend duration versus non-champions. Thread of continuity now extends its duration to 7 instead of 12 seconds. Reduce base suspend duration versus champions from 8 to 3 seconds. Increases snap damage dealt to suspended boss combatants by 67%. Yeah, that's a major nerf. I think it's necessary because Suspend was wild strong, but also as a Titan with a Suspend build, it's kind of a bummer. Threat of Mind reduced class energy gain based on the tier of the defeated target. Minor combatants reduced from 15 to 10. Major combatants reduced 25 to 15. Bosses, champions, and mini bosses reduced from 50 to 25. Threat of Generation reduced overall energy gain per damage against PvE enemies by about 20%. Rebalance the energy gain. And then overall, we reduce the efficiency of fully automatic primary weapons and increase the efficiency of precision primary weapons. I think that's good. Oh, Threadlings increased damage versus PvE combatants 30%. Threadling builds are probably going to be on the menu. Tangle, reduced Tangle creation cooldown from 15 to 12. That's good. Sever, PvE combatants affected by Sever now have their outgoing damage reduced by 40 versus 30%. So you're going to lean into other options besides just Suspend, which I think is still going to be... Suspend is still going to be very good. Threadrunner Silk Strike was a bit unforgiving in the live game in PvP. Silk Strike increased damage resistance, reduced the suppression time, and reduced the vertical lift. Okay. While Threadrunner's threaded aspect is performing well in PvP, we felt it needed a little TLC in PvE. So increased the lifetime from 10 to 12 seconds. Increased Threaded Spectre health versus PvE combatants. Threaded Spectre now takes longer to detect nearby PvE combatants at the beginning of its lifetime. PvE combatants now more consistently focus on it, and allied players no longer have reticle magnetism towards Threaded Spectre. So it hopefully just makes it a better decoy all around. I don't know if... I don't know. I want to see that as an option, especially in solo play, almost as a replacement for invisibility. I know it won't fully replace that, but I want it as a viable option for folks. The Wander aspect is strong when thrown, but is somewhat hard to use in more difficult situations. So Wander Destroying a tangle now creates a delayed suspending detonation, increase suspend detonation radius, and then increase the thrown water tangle detonation damage to match standard tangle detonators. Grapple melee wasn't working as intended, particularly hunters and warlocks with ranged melees. Grapple melee always takes priority when active, regardless of whether or not a target is within range. Good. And now this is the strand fragments that correspond with Threadlings and Sever, more attractive picks. So essentially, as a Titan, I'm going to want to make a Sever build. As a Warlock, I'm going to want to make a Threadling build with all these different buffs. So all this is coming in Season 22 and some more changes as well. Tune in on launch day for the full list. While Season 22 is getting locked in, we're working on Season 23 changes as well. We'll have more to share about Season 23 at a later date. Yeah, overall, interesting. I do think we're going to see a wild shift because you always see a different meta when the new season starts because of the artifact mods. The artifact perks will all change things up quite a bit. But then on top of that, all these exotic changes, everything, you'll be surprised sometimes when one of these random buffed exotics actually becomes a meta, and I think we will see that at a certain point, and I'm excited to see how that happens, see which ones rise to the top. I'll be doing a bunch of videos on that once they do drop, whether it is builds, whether it is highlighting exotics that are now fantastic or a lot of fun to play. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hit that like button if you did. Subscribe to the channel, helps me out tremendously. Shows you want to see more Destiny 2 content from me going forward. My name is JoPa. I hope you have a good one, and I'll catch you all later.